This is a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Connecting the dots for businesses in today's top story with Celcom Digi Business.
7:49 a.m. You're listening to The Morning Run with Shazana, Shou, Ning and Keith. Now, the Ministry of Finance is preparing to unveil a new public-private partnership master plan as part of Budget 2025, which will be tabled on October 18th.
The plan aims to boost private sector investment in crucial public infrastructure and improve the management of risks and returns between public and private entities, and it builds on past models like the 1991 Privatisation Master Plan and the 2021 PPP 3.0. The new PPP Master Plan aims to align with PM Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim's vision of enhancing public-private philanthropy partnerships for the rakyat.
So how will this master plan impact Malaysia's overall approach to public infrastructure development, and really what measures will need to be implemented to address past challenges and ensure success?
For some thoughts on this, we have on the line with us Dr. Carmelo Ferlito, CEO of the Centre for Market Education. Good morning, Carmelo. Thanks very much for joining us as always. So as mentioned, the MOF plans a new PPP, Public-Private Partnership Master Plan in Budget 2025 to boost private investment in public infrastructure. Help us understand how this initiative could benefit the broader economy.
Indeed, I think this is the way to go, and the right start would be also to do some modifications on the jargon, in the sense that we tend to see private as opposed to public, but indeed I'm of the idea that we should always talk about public services which are eventually provided by the private sector or by the government. And this is my first observation. And I think that moving in the direction of strengthening PPPs is important, in particular for transport infrastructure. Because if we want to develop an alternative mode of transportation within our country, we cannot think that the government can finance in the long term and forever these things. To have a model which is sustainable in the long run, we need the involvement of the private sector. But in order for these projects to be successful, I believe that the involvement of the private sector should not be only at the financing stage, but also the designing stage. Mm-hmm. Because the private sector is obviously better placed in the market to respond to market signals, and therefore it could be better placed to advise on which projects can have a higher chance of success.
Carmelo, we previously had similar plans in 1991 and in 2021. A couple of questions. How effective were these models, and is there something that we can learn from it to implement the new one?
I think that at this regard, the two major issues are first, that these big master plans, roadmaps, are often wonderful documents, but little more than wish lists, and they don't move forward to become more like business plans and to the engagement stage with the relevant stakeholders. And this is the first observation. The second, I believe, and this will be probably the major obstacle for designing long-term PPPs, is that Malaysian private sector is characterized by an overwhelming presence of small and medium enterprises. And these kind of enterprises don't have the resources to be partners in this kind of project. So lack of availability of capital may be the biggest stumbling block.
Carmelo, if we look at our history in terms of PPPs, it's been a checkered one, and there have been some massive failures where the argument is that the government is left holding the baby, right? And the risk lies with the government and the reward is with the corporates. How do we address this if we are really going to be introducing a new PPP master plan?
Yeah, I think that the idea of sharing both revenues, risks, and costs is important. So it should be a real partnership, but in order for make this partnership indeed effective, it means that it needs to be a partnership since the very first moment. So rather than having the government designing something and then asking for the private sector to jump in with financing, and then we will see who is going to run and how, I think that the involved parties should sit together since the design stage. So the project is conceived together, designed together, and then eventually run together with a sharing of responsibilities and honors.
Do you see this new PPP master plan as being a mechanism to attract more international investors into the ecosystem?
Let's say that I hope so, for the same reasons that I mentioned before, which is the potential lack of availability of domestic capital to finance PPPs. So if a dialogue is open with foreign stakeholders, I think this would be a good move.
I mean, what do you say about, at some point there seems to always be a lack of transparency when it comes to master plans like these. What do you say to a suggestion maybe that there should be some kind of commitment to transparency going forward?
Yeah, I think that that's why it's important to have the private sector involved since the very beginning, so that the design stage becomes more like a business plan stage, and then the possibility for the private sector to run really the show, increase the level of transparency, because the private sector is more obliged toward the stakeholders, the shareholders, to be transparent and to see, and eventually, of course, the profit motive there is the best transparency, in the sense that if the model is not sustainable, then the project will collapse.
Carmelo, thanks very much for speaking with us. That was Dr. Carmelo Ferlito, CEO of the Center for Market Education, weighing in on the proposal for a new public-private partnership master plan and what needs to be in that plan in order to actually be effective.
I've always been worried about the transparency issues when it comes to PPPs like these. Because, when we had the master plans in place for 1991 and 2021, we don't really know what happened, what came out of it. And I think it's also incumbent on the government to at least educate the public about it, because, one of the P's is public after all.
BFM 89.9.
Stay informed with Top Story with your trusted business partner, Celcom Digi Business.
You have been listening to a podcast from BFM 89.9, the business station. For more stories of the same kind, download the BFM app.